privilege to stand here in front of so many Thai medical specialists and public health professionals. I have to start to express my gratitude. It is indeed a very fantastic dinner we are having. It's a very important conference, and we have really enjoyed the very good selection of awardees for the prize this year, which we have attended. Undoubtedly, all participants here share my gratitude to the organizers, and let me be the one who is conveying that. But, standing on stage in Thailand, I have a very special gratitude to convey to the medical professionals in Thailand and to the people of Thailand. Sweden and Thailand has a special relation since many years ago. There are a number of contact points in history, and paradoxically, our countries came much closer to each other, and the Swedish people came to love the Thai people much more after the terrible tsunami tragedy. This is very paradoxical, because many Swedes were injured and died in the tsunami of 2004. We are a small country. The population of Sweden is only the size of the population of Bangkok. And due to this, the crude death rate from the tsunami in the Swedish population was almost the same as in the Thai population. In fact, Sweden was one of the most hit countries by the tsunami in proportion to our size. The Swedish child mortality increased by 25% in 2004 due to the tsunami, because on that Boxing Day morning, the beaches were full of young Swedish families with children. And how come that Sweden, after such a tragedy, gained a great gratitude to the country in which that catastrophe happened? It's paradoxical, but there are two very straightforward explanations for it, and that's what I would like to share with you. First, it is the Thai culture. Many Swedish survivors recall over again how the local Thai population received them immediately and unselfishly in their homes. They washed their wounds, they gave them their clothes, they gave them food and water, they helped with transport, they even gave money, cash money to Swedes. And Swedes are not used to ask for cash money, and they didn't have to ask, they were given in advance. And people were very touched by that. There are still Swedish survivors who keep the t-shirt they were given by a Thai family at home as a very cherished memory of getting help in the moment of greatest need. That's why we have this gratitude. The second reason for the gratitude is to the Thai health system. We know that the health service and the hospitals in the emergency area was absolutely overburdened. But in spite of that, with great heroism and professional skill, the staff managed to keep the death rates of those who reached the hospital at an amazingly low level. And we, after investigating, could not identify one single case of the Swedish deaths that could have been avoided with more resources having been flown in from outside immediately. We were really impressed by that. Also, the most severe cases were airlifted very swiftly to the advanced care in Bangkok. And there happened something which really made us realize afterwards the level to which Thai medicine has reached. An organization was done spontaneously in Sweden with a private jet of Volvo, and a number of doctors rushed to the jet and they flew to Bangkok to rescue the Swedish patients from the hospital in Bangkok. Those were the preconceived ideas in Sweden about the level of medical care in Bangkok. They rushed into the wards, and I can recall a story from one family who were scared when the Swedish doctors came, and they said, "But we cannot go home yet. We are not completely cured and healed." They were very comfortable with the Thai care, and they resisted absolutely to leave the hospital until the treatment was finished. So the plane went back almost empty. This this made us realize that what Prince Mahidol of Songkhla said, that the application of the knowledge to the benefit of mankind actually came to include a lot of Swedes in 2004, that Thailand was capable to care for them. And we also became aware that the medical specialists in Sweden and the politicians and the journalists and the public at large were not aware of what had happened in Thailand. And I will use Gapminder's bubble here to show you what really had happened in Thailand. I've chosen 1929, the year of the untimely death of Prince Mahidol, when he had started to modernize medicine and public health in Thailand. At that time, Thailand, which is the small bubble here, size of the bubble is population, color is the continent up here. On this axis I have children per woman. You have 1 child families over here, 3 child families, 5 and 7, and Thailand had 6 children per woman. And life expectancy was only 30 years in Thailand, whereas Sweden up there already have in 1929 more than 60 years of life expectancy and less than 2 children per woman. They were like 2 different planets. And this was to be called the developing world down here, and up there was the industrialized world. Now, was the effort of Prince Mahidol, were they successful? Look out now what has happened. Will the health, when I start the years here of Thailand, will they improve or will they not? I will start it now. Ready, steady, go. Here you can see that immediately Thailand started to move up like here. They are moving very successfully. The Second World War was a bad time, but then they came up here and they made it very fast. And 1950s were more successful, but still very large families, 6 children per woman. And what happens up here is that in the 1960s, who is coming? It is Mr. Condom, the awardee. And he is starting to recruit the family size of Thailand. And condoms are being widely used. And Thailand move up into this corner, and they are even getting closer to Sweden. And we should have known this, that Thailand, long before the tsunami, was a country of the same family size as Sweden and with a quite long life expectancy. Let's go a little more into details and see what had happened with this one. If I jump back to 1930 here, and I ask for trails, and I take away the rest of the world, and I just show you the track of Thailand and Sweden. It's really very strange to continue to call Thailand a developing country. We need a better term. We need another classification so we can understand that Thailand today has 1.81 children per woman, and Sweden has 1.84. It couldn't be more equal. And isn't that fantastic effect of the work of Mr. Mishai? And you know, when you win an award, you can gain the admiration of colleagues. But you can be even better than that, and that is if you win the envy of colleagues. And I heard yesterday, when we were standing a group of men in one corner at the reception, that many of us were envious of Mr. Mishai, because his name came to be the word for condom in the Thai language. And as always, Richard Horton expressed our envy best way. And he said, what a fantastic thing to happen to you. That's better than being editor of The Lancer. Just think about if a young teenager would rush down into the shop on Friday night and ask for 2 Hortons. So I couldn't show better the success of the family planning in Thailand. But let us look here and see if I change these to economy. I compare Sweden and Thailand also with economy on this axis instead. You can see that Thailand was all the way down here. They had only about $700 in purchasing power in today's value in 1930, and they made it all the way up there. So Thailand today corresponds more or less to the situation in Sweden when I was a young child. But when was Sweden down there? Is this fast or slow? Let's bring Sweden backwards. We had quite a long data series of Sweden, so we can take Sweden all the way down here, and then we can go up, and we can see that Thailand, at the time of Prince Mahidol's start of the fantastic progress in health, Thailand was where Sweden was about 1800. That is 150 years before I was a young child. And Thailand did that in about 60 years. So can you see? Thailand did it from here to here with twice the speed of Sweden. And how did they do it? They did it by getting healthy and educated first and then getting the economic growth. Wouldn't Ann Mills love that? To see that the investment, the early investment in public health and education really helped out, as were similar situations in some other Asian countries which have had the social investments very early. But we could go in and see that Thailand haven't had an easy ride. It's not a country with a lot of mineral resources that just have picked money to use for its development. It's not a country which had been free from conflict in its surrounding countries. In fact, there have been many challenges. And if I expand this area of the last years of Thailand, here we will see immediately. Look, here is 1988, and you can see what happens here is that the life expectancy stops to increase. It's the HIV epidemic, which is starting to hit Thailand. And then the catastrophe in the economic crisis with about 6 years lost when Thailand was here. This is what happened to Sweden during the Second World War. Sweden was here. But isn't it amazing how close the relation between economy and life expectancy is between Sweden and Thailand? So how come that the HIV stopped the improvement of life expectancy here, but then after the economic crisis, it regained it? We have to go and look at the HIV data. We have to go and look at HIV data. And here we are. Now we have money, dollar per person on this axis, and here we have percent adults with HIV on that axis. The color is once more continents, and the size of the bubble now is the number of persons infected with HIV. The height here shows the rate. And when the virus was discovered, Uganda had the highest rate in the world, and the number of patients were almost as many in the United States due to the bigger population of the United States. And what has happened with HIV in the world is more or less this, that it skyrocketed in some countries in southern and eastern Africa. Most African countries remained low. Thailand started very early, and look how terribly the bubble of Thailand is climbing here until the other awardee, Worldwide, took it like this and said 100% condoms, we have to stop this. And you can see the Thai bubble is stopping, and after the regression there in economy, the Thai bubble is going down a little like this, and Russia is coming up later and is reaching almost the same level. But Thailand never came higher than that. The HIV catastrophe was stopped at an early stage in Thailand. How come that the prevalence remained so high? Well, let me show you this in another way. Let me show you here. I have money, income per person there. I have HIV frequency here, but now on a logarithmic scale, so that we can see more in detail what happened to Thailand. For many decades now, for 2 decades, we have counted the burden of HIV with prevalence in adults. It has been an indicator which has been relatively successfully developed, especially after applying the DHS survey in many countries, when we got more representative data. But this is what happened to Thailand. Why doesn't it fall more here? Because the country is also relatively successful in providing treatment. And this just shows one of the dilemma when we work with health indicators. That prevalence of HIV is becoming useless at the same time as we are getting measurements which are quite good. because prevalence depends now both how many are infected and how well those infected are treated. And prevalence as such doesn't say something. This could mean that Thailand is lying there, that newly infected is very low, whereas most of those infected are getting treatment. It could also mean that the number of infected is as high as those who are dying, and that treatment is not so effective. We need drastically to move on and get incidence indicators for HIV and get treatment indicators that are better than your cumulative numbers we still are living with. But without any doubt, the awardees, Mishai and Dr. Weawat, was really successful in these two. And I think it was courageous to give prize to those from your own country. But in this case, they were well recognized across the world for what they did for family planning and HIV here in Thailand. Now, what does this mean that HIV is coming under control? It means that the MDG for HIV is actually being achieved. MDG says stop the spread of the epidemic and start to reverse it. And that's being done in most of the countries. The HIV MDG is bound to be achieved in most countries. And I want to swap over and talk a little more about MDGs. And I'm going to show you the best measured MDG, most probably the best measured, and that is child mortality. And instead of starting there, I should have started there, perhaps, yes. And showed you that if I here display child mortality against income in the world, 1959, the year when this international development aid really started in the world. And we had 100 million births in the world that year. Average income $3,000, average child mortality 150. And this was the difference between the blue developing countries and the brown industrialized countries. If I zoom in, you will be able to see this even better. Those were developing countries, those were industrialized countries. And this is what happened. You can see our economic growth is bringing them out of this bubble, this area they were living in, and other countries are coming in. This is of course China, and here India is coming. And look today, the former area for industrialized countries are completely occupied by other countries which used to be called developing. And when I turn my computer around at home, it says made in Thailand. And when I buy a new Volvo next year, it will be made in China, wouldn't it? It doesn't make sense, this classification, any longer. I heard today in the first plenary how Jeanette Vega from Chile said we have to have different policies for countries at different levels. It doesn't make sense to mix Singapore or Chile with Congo up there any longer. The dichotomy of the world into two groups is gone. It doesn't exist. We have countries at all different levels, and there is a need for policy, for health information system for those different levels also. How fast did this change happen? Well, I like very much to leave this 2/3 in 25 years. It's very difficult to explain. Very difficult to explain. I like the new way of counting it instead. It's this average annual rate of reduction with 4.3% per year. Why do I like it? Because I go lecture in corporate sector, and I go and lecture to the public, and they are used to measure economic growth in percent change per year. Now we can show our health change in percent improvement per year. And you get a very fast acceptance of that. Now, how fast does it go? Because we would like to make the children healthier in a very fast way. And that's where Sweden is today. Very favorable, relatively rich, very low child survival. Let us go 100 years back in history with Sweden. I fly Sweden backwards, and this is where we land 1900. We had about $3,000 to $4,000. We were at quite bad child health. There's not one country in the world on that economic level that has as bad child health today. And interestingly enough, where Sweden was 1900 is exactly where Bangladesh were 90 years later. So Bangladesh was 90 years later, because when we started to measure MDG, they also had 150. Let's now make a chicken race. Ready, steady, go. Here we go. Will Sweden win or will Bangladesh win? We are having a race here for 16 years, and look, Bangladesh is winning. They are reducing with amazing 4.7% per year. That's faster than Millennium Development Goal. And I think the goal should be set not in what we achieved 2015. It's to achieve that rate, which we know is possible. It's fully possible. And to keep that rate. Sweden was not very good. We'll give Sweden one more chance, shouldn't we? 1916, Sweden had the same child mortality as Egypt had 1990. Ready, steady, go. But Egypt, you know, they got electricity from the Aswan Dam. They got better water in the Nile Delta, primary health care, eradicated malaria, amazing 5.5. Almost 50% faster than Millennium Development Goal rate. Sweden lost again. Third chance for Sweden. We raced against Brazil. Brazil had 1990 the same as Sweden in 1932, and here we go, you know. And look, Brazil was relatively rich. We all know Brazil as a country of great capacity and great resources, but with also great inequities. Geographical, social, ethnical, all sorts of inequities. So Brazil was relatively rich. Will they make it or will they not? Here Sweden is coming, Sweden is trying here, but Brazil is starting social investment, and they start really effective health system, and they change the whole policy system. 6.3%, almost twice the rate, closer to twice the rate. Very fast. Don't say that Millennium Development Goals are not achieved. There are most goals achieved in most countries when you sit down and look at it, actually. And especially this. But my students in Sweden, they don't like this, you know. They don't like to lose like this. They say, this is not just. Because Sweden is competing without penicillin and without vaccine, with those who have the great technologies. This is not just. Of course, if the situation were equal, those Asians wouldn't have a chance against us, you know. Okay, I said, let's take when I was born. We have Sweden here, and we have the most tropical of all tropical country, a malaria-infested country who just came out of a terrible war on the equator, Singapore. Ready, steady, go. Singapore get the malaria away, they gain their independence, they start to grow their economy, and they invest in health and education, and they're catching up with Sweden, and we never thought this would happen, that they would come so close, and never would we thought that they would win! This is a difficult meal to serve in Sweden. Even UNICEF had problem with that. Good, great UNICEF, who have been doing so much early on for putting evidence and data as the basis of policy. It was only 2 years ago when UNICEF stopped calling Singapore a developing country. Then they already for 2 years had been having the lowest child mortality in the world. So something is wrong in our concept and in that dichotomy. All these countries, green one here, they are faster than Millennium Development Goals. These are a little slower. These are the problem countries. These are the problem countries that there's almost no progress or very slow progress. And they are mainly the low-income countries. And then there's some North Korea and Myanmar, some other problem countries here. But it's mainly up there, and this is the way we have to see the world. This is the way we have to have different policies at different levels. And I have a good news here. Look at Tanzania. This is a study published now soon 2 years ago, but I talked with Thies Burma here, who was one of the authors, and he said that later data even confirmed this effect. Look here. Child mortality, conventional graph in Tanzania, taking all available data into consideration. During the 90s, no progress. Then came animals, and this happened. That is a little simplification, but really, you know, I think it was so great to honor a health economist with a prize in medicine, you know, because I remember first time I listened to Ann Mills when she said, no, the malaria impregnated bed net is cost effective, but the poorest who need it most cannot afford it. So market solution won't work. We have to have something more clever. That was when I learned the importance of economic analysis. And probably the doubled health budget by the government, based largely on economic growth in Tanzania. Tanzania is growing with 5% per year. Very unequal, but still it generates funds for the country. Immunization is being provided, health more rational, bed nets are there. I could mention other interventions. It's not easy to directly relate it. We have those new studies from West Africa where it seems that the secular trend is stronger actually of reduced child mortality. I'll give you a new possible reason for this secular trend in child mortality, which hasn't been much discussed. It may be the literacy of the grandmother. What happens in a country when you also have the grandmother and the mother-in-law who are literate and have a modern view on the upbringing of children? Perhaps that we are analyzing too narrowly, which has also been said here by the prize winners. Too narrowly we are looking at intervention. The broader social dimensions and social determinants of health may be more important. Now, how do we manage to see all these indicators? Look here. I'm just going to show, I have to show Thailand also in the same way, if I get the full screen there. Money, child mortality, 1960, Thailand was up there. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. You have to transmit this. And I get so angry when I lecture with this program and journalists afterwards write, he's an optimist. I'm no optimist, for God's sake. I just happen to know how the child mortality has fallen. But if you are evidence-based and you show what emerging economies and countries like Thailand has achieved, you are called optimist. But it's quite amazing, and this is faster than Millennium Development Goal rate. Sweden, during the last 100 years, decreased with 3.1% per year. We never, ever reached MDG rate. Even after we had the vaccines and modern technology, we never ever did it that fast. So we shouldn't shout too loud when countries with great difficulties, and enormous social problems now in sub-Saharan Africa only do it with 1.5 or a little faster. The most important thing is that it's speeding up in almost all countries, even low-income countries. And we need this data in the best way possible so that we can use it. Because data is important, and I would agree with what has been said here today. The most important is that data is being used at local level, and intermediate level, district level. It so happens that I'm doing it on global level, and even there it's important. One thing which I do not agree, it's the focus which is a little too much on decision making for policy. Who are making the decision? It is the people who are making the decision. We need data democratically available in civil society also. Data is paid for by the people and should be available in different kinds of presentations by the corporate sector, by the civil society, and by academia. And we spend perhaps too much efforts on these epidemic outbreaks. I defend mostly what WHO have done and what National Disease Control Institute have done. It's media who exaggerate sometimes, But really, I think we have to go more and analyze the chronic condition. And especially one chronic condition I want you to analyze is DBHD. Because DBHD may cause much more mortality than both of these flu viruses. And it's quite endemic. I've heard that it has even entered into WHO in Geneva, you don't know what it is? DBHD, it's database hugging disorder. It's a very severe disorder. It kills a lot of people because one person is sitting on the tuberculosis database and doesn't want to share it with the one who has the tuberculosis, the HIV database. We have to have the different data in unified format, and we must have it available. So in this way we can get much better use of it, and we can't predict the new use with technology. I'm very much a fan of the technology, but also we have the risk of looking at these gears and all these fancy things, as they will solve problems instead of the needs. We can't foresee what really will be effective, so we have to try a lot of things at small scale. But the data itself has to be compiled, and it has to be processed in a very, very steady way over the years. And I can't think of any more rational way of using additional resources than increasing the core budget of WHO. It has gone too low today. It has gone too low today. And I also noted that United Nations Statistic Division, they provide their data free to use and free to redistribute, whereas the World Bank continue to use taxpayers' money to compile data and sell it in irrational, old-fashioned Gutenberg ways. And I advise the president of the World Bank to walk down the Pennsylvania Avenue a few blocks into the new Obama administration and listen to the people who run the webpage data.gov, because now there are two big institutions on Pennsylvania Avenue, and one is Gutenberg and one has entered into the internet age, and I think they should have more collaboration, those two. They don't have to go far, the World Bank, to learn how you run things. By the way, it's an Indian immigrant, Vivek Kundra, who's doing a great job at the age of 35 as the first ever Chief Information Officer of the United States of America. It's very interesting. He's not from the producer side of data, he's from the user side of data. And we have to get these two sides together, because you get innovation. Dissemination, we used to say. Dissemination, we're going to throw data out like this. A disseminator in the Swedish language throws out cow dung on the field. And that's good, you fertilize a little, but it's not the way to use data. When we say communication, but communication is still the statistical agency and the state communicate with the people. That's not it. Give access. This is the new thing. Access to data, but in a controlled way. The data should be owned by the producer, and recognition should be there. And in fact, I have discovered in the first trial how you can cure database hacking disorder. Recognition 3 times daily. Because it's a great job people are doing who compile these databases. And they must get recognition, and they must get their budget secured when other benefit from adding value to it and getting it out in a rational way. Can more innovation come? Yes, I think so. The world, we generate data there, and it's our obligation to send it back. This is my conceptual model. It's quite easy. You will remember it. Don't forget this arrow. It's a very important arrow. Very, very important arrow. So what is Gapminder doing? We are a non-profit foundation. We provide things on the net, and we innovate new things. This is our new thing. I dressed up here as a croupier, and we have developed the world's first casino. And there you can get the ships, and you can bet on the progress of Thailand, Mexico, and other countries, and then the bubbles go, and it's a very good way of educating statistics. Just an example on how many ways with a new technology, if data is free, we can get innovation. We have a great time ahead of us with health information. Thank you very much.